So we swing the pendulum from abstract, philosophical anchoring of spirit in body to the very pragmatic logistics of being young and in love. What's the right age? A few days ago we had spoken about a very, very beautiful young 15-year-old who had asked me about whether falling in love was a crime, because she had fallen in love with a boy who everyone told her was the wrong boy to be in love with. So we had spoken about that, and today the question is, so if we should always honor love, as I had mentioned a few days ago, that even if the boy is not right, the love should be honored. She's asked, so what's the right age to fall in love? What's the right age to be with someone emotionally, physically? And what's the right age to marry? Well, anything I say is going to get me into trouble with someone. The outer expression of inner love is something that you cannot put any kind of a cookie cutter on. I cannot sit up here and say this age is the right age. You cannot even say what age is the right age to marry. What I can say, though, is that throughout evolution, there's several types of evolution that are happening simultaneously. One is cultural evolution. Societies, how societies changed. So the world that your grandmother grew up in is like black and white, night and day, from the world you're growing up in, even though you're both Indian and India. Even though you might literally be living in the same city that your grandma grew up in. The world that your mom grew up in is somewhere between the two, but probably closer to your grandma's world than to your world. How old are you? 19. Okay, so your generation in this country is really and all over the world, but especially in India, is really a brand new generation. Yes, societies have been evolving as long as there have been societies. And yet, with the introduction, first of TV and cinema entertainment into India, which was only a few decades ago, that brought in all of Western life. And then the introduction of the internet, social media, smartphones, we're talking a decade, has literally changed the world that you're living in. I do not believe that your grandmother ever wondered what the right age was to be physical with a boy. It wasn't part of her world. I'm not saying that she didn't have the same biology that was flooding through her and have the same wonder and awe about her body. Of course she did. But having an intellectual question of, well, so when will it be right to act on this with a boy, is not a question I believe that your grandmother ever had. It very likely is not a question your mother ever had. So we're treading brand new waters. So we have cultural evolution, societal evolution. That happens very, very quickly. We have physical evolution. Our bodies change. Okay? We end up with organs that are vestigial, like the appendix. Okay, I'm sure it served a purpose at some point in history. It no longer does. But physical evolution is so slow that we still have it. If you study, cultural anthropology, not what I studied, but they could tell you all about how the evolution of culture and the evolution of the physical body kind of go together. But what we know is if you look at our ancestors, I'm going back tens of thousands of years, not decades, they look different. The body proportions are different. I mean, they're obviously humans, but based on what their lives were like, their bodies were different. As our brains have grown, our skull has changed. The shape of our face has changed. So much about our bodies has changed. So we have physical evolution that's going along with it. And I mention this very specifically because people used to die a lot earlier than they do now. Healthcare, even 100 years ago, was not what it is today. The number of babies who died in birth or in utero were huge compared to the number of babies who die today. Even going back a few generations, women used to have 9, 10 children or get pregnant 9, 10 times in order to have 2 or 3 kids because of the rate of death in utero or child death. Okay? We now have got a system of pre- and postnatal care that means there's a really good chance that all of your children are going to stay alive. If you want 2 or 3 kids, chances are if you get pregnant 2 or 3 times, you're going to have 2 or 3 kids. You don't have to plan to be pregnant 10 times to have 2 or 3 kids. So we used to have, not very long in the past, much shorter lives and much higher rates of death of children. What that meant was that girls used to get pregnant, needed to get pregnant a lot earlier. They had to get started. If you were going to have 9 or 10 kids and you were going to die by 40, well, you're already running late. Yeah, you're already several years behind. You've got catch up to do. 19 already, my God. This was how the culture worked with the physical constraints. We no longer have life expectancy of 40. We no longer have child mortality rates that they were. We also now have science that keeps, women fertile much, much longer than they used to. I can't tell you how many friends I have who didn't even start to think about having children until they were 35. And who all now, or most of them, have children. It's not as easy as when you're 25, but modern science has made it possible, which has changed a lot of what culture looks like. People are going to school, getting advanced degrees, wanting to, explore the world. With what's happened with travel, you now could easily take, a year off and go and see the world. And this is what a lot of people are wanting to do. I mention all of this because the biological hormones in the body that say sex, 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 sex from the time that you start menstruating are there for a reason. They're there because in the biology of your body, it hasn't caught up to our cultural revolution. Physical evolution is very slow. Hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years for physical changes to take place. And cultural evolution, every generation. So you've got a body that still thinks you're going to die at 40 and that you've got to be pregnant 10, 15 times. And so from the minute that we start menstruating and become fertile, these hormones that are making you menstruate that are sending, creating eggs, sending them down your tubes are saying, sex, 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 gotta fertilize the egg, right? I mean, I've got to get pregnant, got to have a kid. That biology has no idea about your plans for medical school. It has no idea about all the things that you may want to do before you get married and settle down. It has no idea about what modern science has done. It has no idea about the fact that you only want 1 or 2 kids anyway. It has no idea about any of that. All it knows is hormones. And so the thoughts in your mind of how much longer do I have to wait for God's sakes are very normal and natural. And you should never, ever, ever feel guilty or impure or bad or wrong for having those feelings. This is biology flooding your body. But we're also not slaves to our biology. We have minds. We have intelligence. We have the ability to plan that says, hey, wait, I'm still in school. I'm not ready to get pregnant yet. Even if I'm ready to get married, I'm certainly not ready to get pregnant. I've got to finish my education. And I'm only 19. I've got gobs of years ahead of me. And I haven't actually found somebody who feels right. And I am only 19. And so the thoughts are able to do that and to help you plan, to realize there's no rush. Even though our culture may have said, get married young because we have high infant mortality rates. Well, not so much anymore. The culture simply because it was the thing to do. Because girls maybe a few generations ago weren't becoming doctors and getting advanced degrees and, doing all of that. Well, okay. Get married, have babies, why not? This is your dharma. Also because so frequently, before a lot of modern technology came in, there was so much to do around the house. I mean, there still is, even with technology, but prior to technology, there was so much more. The mothers needed help. They needed their sons to get married, so there would be someone who could come and help. They needed a wife, a daughter-in-law, to help them out as they aged. But culture is changing very, very quickly. These factors are not so much factors anymore. And this is why there's no cookie cutter answer. What I would say is, first and foremost, finish your studies first. The biology of sex and the emotional state that goes along with that is very, very difficult to have running simultaneous to intense exams and studies. It's very difficult to stay focused on school when you're physically involved with someone, especially if he happens to be anywhere in the vicinity. As long as you're in school, let that be your focus. This is why, according to Indian tradition, we have 4 ashrams of life. Brahmacharya ashram, the first 25 years. So your years to study. Years of celibacy, years of abstinence. Even if later you're going to get married, great. But in those years, we're studying Brahmacharya. Learning about the divine universe. So it's not just learning math and reading and science, but learning the nature of the universe. Real study. Study in school and study yourself. Who am I? Because once I become so-and-so's wife, so-and-so's daughter-in-law, so-and-so's mother, so-and-so's employee, Well, those are identities that get imposed on me. So we use this time to learn, who am I? Before I'm so-and-so's wife or daughter-in-law or mother. Who am I? And then they say 25 to 50. So that's your householder stage, grihasthashram. This is the time, have a career, have kids, do all of that. 50 to 75, your vanprasthashram stage. You move away from those things. Kids now are grown, they're doing their own thing. You retire from the workplace. And, traditionally people move to ashrams. They serve, they give selflessly because they're still, strong and healthy. They've got their whole lives of knowledge and experience, and now it's to give back. Puja Swamiji says, learn, earn, return. So I learn it, then I earn for myself, my family. Yeah, I give donations to the community, and then vanprasthashram, I return it. That which I have gotten from the world, I give it back in service. And then the final 75 to 100 is sannyasashram. So according to that, the right age is unequivocally 25. If you want as close to a cookie cutter answer as I could give you, it's that. Okay? But don't feel badly at all about the impulse to do things quickly. Because your body still thinks that you're living thousands of years ago.